Good morning. It's much better. Welcome to this session, which is dedicated to synergies for innovation. We are a very small group. I hope it will be as much interactive as it could be. And before I introduce myself and the panelists, maybe myself first. My name is Monika Vrbkova, and besides working for JIC, which is the innovation agency located in Brno, I will be the moderator for this panel. And before introducing the great panelists we have today, I would like to ask you to have questions even during the panel discussion. It's okay, because, as I already mentioned, it would be great to have it interactive. And I would like to call the panelists. I would like to invite Baptiste Bouet, Director of EU Business Unit at EIT InnoEnergy. We have Anabela Carvalho, the advisor for strategy and internationalization at Portuguese National Innovation Agency. Guy Sequeira, sorry, head of unit for EIC Board Strategy and Feedback to Policy at SME Executive Agency of the European Commission. Anatoly Subok, Policy Officer at Recovery and Resilience Task Force of the European Commission. And last but not least, representative on the beneficiary side, Pavel Turchina, who is Chief Executive Officer at Go Space Tech. So please welcome. And before I jump into the discussion, I would like to open a little bit the topic, which, as I mentioned, is on synergies for innovation. And we are all concerned here about that. And today we'll be talking mainly about EIC, which is the key European instrument supporting breakthrough innovations with global potential and important player when it comes to synergies. There are already several mechanisms how these synergies are supported, including Seal of Excellence scheme that allows the member states to finance high-quality proposals, and also the schemes that enables faster access to the selection process, such as plug-in and fast-track. But we will be talking also about other opportunities that are linked or supporting innovations, such as EIT and its role also in EIC and business acceleration services. And, of course, the Recovery and Resilience Fund. So, to set a scene a little bit, I would like to ask Keith to introduce EIC a little bit, and especially those mechanisms for synergies, because still it's quite new and might not be familiar to all of you. So, Keith, it's all yours.
Thank you, Monica. So all of this is quite new, and so I thought it was useful just to make sure we're all understanding what is the EIC, what is the fast track, what is the plug-in, what is the Seal of Excellence. So I'm going to have to stand, otherwise I can't see the slides. So the EIC, we launched it just over a year ago, in March 2021. It's got a budget of over 10 billion euros under Horizon Europe, and it's dedicated to identifying, developing and scaling up disruptive technologies and innovation. We think it's quite unique because it goes from very early stage with the Pathfinder scheme, the previous future and emerging technologies. We put in this new transition instrument to get from the laboratory into a commercial setting. And then the main thing we're going to be talking about today is the accelerator, which is a single company scheme and increasingly focused on startups. It's eligible for all SMEs, but we look at the companies we're funding. They're mostly very young, very small companies with very radical new technologies. The accelerator itself is a big novelty for European funding. It's a combination mostly of grant funding and equity. So we go from quite small grants, quite small investments, but still €500,000, right up to investments of over 15 million euros in companies. We've been testing it out for a few years in a pilot scheme, so we already have quite a lot of investments. It is highly competitive. If I look at the experience in the first year, we have this new process where companies can apply for short applications at any time. They get an answer usually in 3 weeks, and we've received about 6,000 of these in the first year. They can then, if they pass this first stage, go to a full application stage, and we have regular cut-offs every 3 months. We've had 3 of those cut-offs in the first year, and we got just over 1,000 companies submitting at each of those cut-offs. And we select pretty quickly within a couple of months of the cut-off. So we have selected so far just over 230 companies. So you see from the 6,000 to 230, it is quite a competitive, and we're really looking for companies that have the potential to become leaders in their field. So what you'll see here is a very sort of simplified diagram of how this works. What we're doing mostly at the moment is the open call. So companies come directly to us at this first phase, we evaluate them, we give them a yes or no, and then they can proceed to the full application stage. When they proceed, they get free access to coaching to help them develop their proposals. They get access to a platform that supports the development of their full application. So what is new here is some very new synergies. First of all, what we're calling the fast track. So the fast track is when a company has already been funded by Horizon Europe or Horizon 2020, and we rely on the assessment of the managing body for that grant to assess whether this company meets the criteria for the accelerator, in which case it goes straight through to the final stage of the process. What we've done so far is that we've launched this fast track with the EIT kicks. Kick Energy is one of them. There's several of the other kicks. So we have a first experience of this. It's also going to be open to Eureka, Eurostars. We are also opening it to the Pathfinder and transition schemes of the EIC. Then we have what we call the plug-in. So the plug-in is the same idea, but for national programs. So we rely on the assessment of the national program about whether the company fits the criteria for the EIC accelerator. And the idea here is sequential funding. So the national program can support the early stage, but if it's a scale-up company, it can be sent to the EIC for more substantial funding and scaling up at European or global levels. Where we are here is that we had an exercise to ask all member states to submit programs. We had an expert group to assess those programs, and we've certified just over 30 programs that meet the criteria for doing this. But that has not yet started. So we've done this certification process, but we have not yet received companies coming from the plug-in scheme. So that's just a short explanation of what we're talking about. In terms of the experience so far, the Seal of Excellence has been running for many years under Horizon 2020. We've had thousands of Seals of Excellence. What we've done under the Horizon Europe EIC is to lift the quality of the Seals of Excellence. So all these companies actually go through the whole process. They go to the jury interview, and we are much more assured that the quality of these companies is really, really high. We have generated just over 300 of those Seals of Excellence in the first year of application. So we expect to be generating, 400 or 500 Seals of Excellence, excellent companies right across Europe. We're also giving these Seal of Excellence companies access to the business acceleration services, and we have a new support scheme through the European Enterprise Network to help Seal of Excellence companies find other funding sources. But of course, the idea of this scheme is that the Seal of Excellence can be picked up by national programs, regional programs, structural fund programs, recovery fund programs. Then the fast track and the plug-in, these are very highly novel. We have had our first companies coming through the fast track from a number of the KICs. We have not funded any of these companies yet. We're still going through the assessment process. So what we expect is in the autumn of this year, we will have had a substantial number of companies coming through the fast track, and together with the KICs, we can look at the experience and see how this goes forward. So I'll probably stop there to allow time for the discussion.
Thank you very much, Keith, for the introduction. And my first question will be to you. You mentioned the synergies of EIC Accelerator with other initiatives, including EIT, etc. What about on the side of the private funding? Because EIC is a great instrument combining public and private funding. Could you elaborate more on synergies there with the private funding, meaning with EIC fund, and how it co-invest or crowd private investors?
Yeah, so probably there's a lot of novelty with these synergies, but the other big novelty is the EIC fund and us investing in equity in companies. And the approach here is not that we want to have, continuous European ownership of companies. This is bridge finance, and the aim is to get private investors to come in at earlier stage and with larger amounts. What we see in Europe is that, compared, for example, with the US, is that companies get smaller investments and it takes them much longer. And for these races for global technologies, this is why Europe is losing out. So each time we take an investment in a company, we are looking for co-investors. We have a platform for co-investors. We have a large number of venture capitalists already on this platform. If I look at the experience of the pilot, where we've made around 130, 140 investments in companies, there's about 50 of those which are co-investments. And in those cases, we've got about €3 for every euro from the EIC fund. So we see it is actually working to crowd investors in, and the stamp of quality from the EIC fund is actually now getting traction with private investors to come along in these quite high-risk new technologies. But the other point I want to make is there's a lot of misunderstanding that we only invest along with other investors, which is not true either. What we see is a lot of the companies are not yet mature for getting a financing round with other investors. So what we do there is we go in first. So we give an investment in this company in the form of a loan, and then that loan will transfer into an equity when the company is ready for a funding round. So this is a mechanism where we can get early stage investment in the company, but with the objective that that company will be receiving a lot of private investment catalyzed by the EIC. So it's a super important point, and I know in other national programs there's a lot of focus on equity as well. A lot of member states have investment vehicles as well, so we are very interested in co-investing with all of those as well.
Thank you. Anatoly, you represent the Recovery and Resilience Facility, which offers additional funding for innovations and enables synergies with other initiatives. Could you explain a little bit this funding initiative, and especially in terms of innovation and its synergies? Because it was mentioned yesterday by the Commissioner Maria Gabriel that there's €44 billion for innovations.
Yes, thank you, Monica. Indeed, I will try to present a little bit this new instrument which is available for funding R&I and in particular innovation. I think it is very topical to talk about Recovery and Resilience Facility, or as it's called, RRF for short. especially because we have just adopted nearly all recovery and resilience plans, which will enable member states to take the benefit of the facility. So 25 plans have already been adopted, only 2 are left. And so the money are starting to flow right now to research and innovation support, and hopefully they will make a difference for the R&I ecosystem in Europe. So I will also show how the RRF provides synergies with other funds. So just to give a small background, the Recovery and Resilience Facility was established in February 2021 as a response of the European Union to the COVID-19 fallout. So basically, the main objective was to make the EU economies and societies to recover, to become greener, more sustainable, more resilient, and to enable green and digital transitions in particular. And in that context, the R&I was always viewed as an enabler, important contributor to achieving all these goals, even though there is no specific target for member states to allocate a certain part of their financial envelope to R&I, unlike for digital or green. Nevertheless, should keep an eye and watch the space because new funding schemes may be rolled out very soon.
Thank you very much, Anatoly. There are many interesting initiatives in those national recovery and resilience plans, including the Czech one, which contains the Seal of Excellence funding. Baptiste, you represent EIT, which might not be well known because, as we discussed before the session, there are currently 8 or already 9 innovation communities of EIT, and you are engaged in EIC through fast track scheme and also in business acceleration services. Could you explain a little bit what EIT InnoEnergy what concretely does in this regard and how it complements the other initiatives?
Thank you very much, Monica. So let me start with a few words indeed on EIT InnoEnergy. We were created about 12 years ago now as one of the first KICs, so Knowledge and Innovation Community, under the remit of the European Institute of Technology, with a mission which is to accelerate innovation for the energy transition. So that's really our topical scope. And to do that, we have created a company, a commercial company, that is an investor and that is an accelerator of innovation, startups, and scale-ups. So our model is to bring early-stage companies to growth and to scale so that they accelerate the energy transition. And to do that, as I said, we are an investor. So we take equity participations, very early stage, small amounts. And then we negotiate with those companies services agreements that we transfer into further equity further down the line. So that's really our model. So we are a commercial, we are for profit, but we are not for dividend. That means that when we earn money out of these investments and the services, we reinvest in new cases, always and always. So after 12 years, we are, I think we have about 200, a bit more, 200 companies in our portfolio. Some are very big. Northvolt, for example, the new battery company, not so new, battery company in Sweden, and a few others. Of course, we are co-funded by the EIT, so we are part of this very diverse offer that exists at EU level to fund innovation, and we're glad that we're part of that. So what differentiates us in a way is that we are a private company that is part of this wide scheme. what we do in terms of services that we provide to startups is that we look at what they need, and they may need technology enhancement, they may need marketing and sales services, but they always need access to finance. And so when we look at access to finance for them, we look at public and we look at private finance. And in a way, we live the synergies or their need for synergies every day. And certainly when we look at the public offering at EU level, after those 10 years, we can say that it's a very good offering. It's very good because it's very diverse, and you can accompany a startup from very early stage to growth, from grant, through debt, through equity, with EIC taking the EIC investment, the equity dimension at the next level now. So it's really good. The one thing is that it's very difficult to navigate. And so synergies is something that we discuss at our own level, but for a startup, I can tell you, it's very abstract. And so it's important, but it's true. And so it's important that there is an effort being made by us, in particular, to help make the most of the public offering and the EU offering today. And for that, and then I turn to your question with regard to the EIC, it is, I think, as Keith said, it's still novel. The fast track and the business acceleration services pilot that we have with EIC. But we see a very strong potential because, as Keith said, it's a matter of showing that in the public offering there is trust among the actors. And so if our companies have access to a fast track, it's because the EIC recognize the work we do with them. And so it creates, let's say, a speedy process for them. So that's very good. And in return, if we can offer business acceleration services to companies that are not in our portfolio yet, it's because we recognize let's say, the quality of the pipeline of the EIC as well. And of course, we bring those services and we de-risk the investment of the EIC. And I think this is a very valid way forward. And feedback is a bit difficult to share now because it's novel, but we see certainly a strong potential. And it certainly can be expanded to other instruments in the future.
Thank you very much, Baptiste. And I will address Annabelle. You have practical experience as the representative of the National Innovation Agency with implementing the Seal of Excellence scheme. And we were also talking about other synergy mechanisms, how we could further support the synergies also with not only with EIC, but with other schemes or other initiatives on the national level. Could you elaborate a little bit on that?
So thank you so much, Monica, and thank you for being here. And just the first thought, I'm not Joanna, you already saw that. She couldn't make it, strike issues in Lisbon airport, and it's important to state that before starting to speak out. So as I think that yesterday's conference was a very fantastic starting of this movement on the synergies that the Czech presidency is putting on the spot. And we were listening a lot programming, designing. And what we found out in 2016, I believe, is that to start implementing the Seal of Excellence in a system that was already running, it was really a nightmare at some point. So it was difficult, it was challenging, but at the end of the day, we managed to do it with other countries at the same time. It was difficult, yes. We have to put some instruments that were already in place. We have to manage procedures. We have to manage templates. We have to fine-tune criteria, evaluation criteria from the European Commission to our national programs. So you have to put all the cats and the mouses in the same bag. So this was difficult, but it was manageable. So we launched in 2018, start to launch it, 3 calls to finance Seal of Excellence phase 2 of SME instrument phase 2. I must say that this was great, really great for our companies. And this is great because you have this Ivy League at EU level, and this is a big brand, not for money, just it's much more than money. That's what we say to our stakeholders. And then you have the Seal of Excellence that allows you to go to the national, regional funds and to do more from that. And this is something that we need to bring forward, to capitalize to our companies. So we managed to fund, I believe, 68 seals. Most of the seals that were awarded, more than 100, we know that the companies at that time have the opportunity to resubmit their proposals. So the seals became formal proposals. That was really good, Keith, at that time, to have the opportunity to resubmit. So this was a great experience from the national point of view. It was difficult, but it was great, and we hope to see it in practice soon for the EIC accelerator, with all the challenges it will have due to the equity part. And what we have done very, very recently, we have just an open call right now. We have expanded this idea to match programming now. What are we matching? Digital Europe program with the, help me, recovery and resilience plan. I was looking at you. With the recovery and resilience plan. Why? Why? We have the so-called European digital innovation hubs. So they need it's 50% co-fund at national level. So we have to manage this measure in a way. How can we take the best of the two programs? How can we do these synergies to take an advantage on this? But before that, what we found out is that, as was being telling yesterday, programming, designing, putting the actors together, political will. But first, what we have said, it was an interministerial group. And this is political will that move forward the implementation of these synergies. So now we have an open call that will fund, probably we have like 17 digital innovation hubs that were recognized by the European Commission, by the Digital Europe program. We have some that, we have 17 that were recognized. They submitted to the European Commission program. Some were selected for full funding, and others got the Seal of Excellence. So they are going to be financed in two ways. They are going to be financed in 50%, the ones that already are financed for the Digital Euro program, and they are going to be full financed, the ones that got the Seal of Excellence. So this is quite nice for our SMEs that are going to take the advantage of the services of these digital innovation hubs for the digital transition. So we see here lots of possibilities from the Seal of Excellence as a driver for the national policies. So we see this really as a boost and as a very interesting opportunity.
Thank you, Annabelle. I think that combining the Digital Europe program with the recovery and resilience will be a lot challenging, maybe more than the Seal of Excellence scheme, and we are just kind of experiencing it, how it will be all combined. So, but you mentioned the Seal of Excellence scheme and how challenging it was to implement it on the national level. You also mentioned that it's really something to receive EIC grant. Do you think it is perceived the same receiving EIC directly from the European Commission and the Seal of Excellence, I mean the funding from the national level, or in some countries or also on the regional one? Maybe a bit provocative question.
Monica, it's like when we approach our companies, our startups regarding the EIC, they know the ones that they are ready to go or that they are almost ready to go. They go that the EIC is much more than the number. It's much more than money, and we all know that. We all know that this will be a booster, of course, but this will be a booster for competitiveness. We already know the spillover effects of having the grants, not just in the EIC, but also in the clusters, also in being in the international networks. And this is something that we try to boost as a national innovation agency that has to support Pillar 2 and Pillar 3 of Horizon Europe. So I'm going a little bit enlarging the scope here, but when you go to Europe, you go to more than money, you go to international relations, you go to competitiveness, and this is something that we try to say to the companies. Of course, that getting this European competition, high competition in the EIC is fantastic. We see the spillover effects all over the place. The Seal of Excellence is something that the proponents come to us, come to the national authorities, and they say, hey, I have the seal, so I already have the recognition. Don't even try to not give me the money.
Yes, Keith.
I just wanted to comment on this because I think we're doing quite a big change in how we position the Seal of Excellence in the current period. We're really trying to make it part of the EIC family. So, you know, before we just passed the Seals of Excellence to the companies and they were a bid on their own. Now what we're doing is that we are bringing them into the EIC community. So we have a community platform, which is all of the companies that we fund, but we will include in that all of the Seal of Excellence companies. That gives them access to the corporate days, the investor pitching, all of these services. So I think it's a different way of working, and of course it means that we need to work much more closely with the managing authorities of the Seal of Excellence. The other thing which I think is really important here is that a lot of the feedback we get from companies is to say, well, we're not sure about applying to the EIC because it's so competitive. So I think for those countries that offer the Seal of Excellence, this is a super important motivation for companies to apply to the EIC, because they know that even if they are not directly funded by the EIC, if they get this Seal of Excellence, they will get the funding from their regional or national program. So I think this is really, I mean, it would help us as well when we go to different countries to promote the EIC. I think it would be great if we, and I think from my side I'd like to do it much more, to promote also the opportunities that that country is offering for the Seal of Excellence as well. And I think it makes a big difference to companies, because then they see that there is, you know, if they get through the system, they will be funded, whether it's from directly from the EIC or the national or regional authority.
Thank you, Keith, for complimenting on that. You mentioned, and I think it's great that you opened some of the benefits of EIC to Seal of Excellence companies that were financed on the national levels. However, you also mentioned that you tend to focus on the quality even more and reducing basically the number of seals, if I understood it correctly. And from the numbers I have in Horizon 2020, the last year, we had over 3,000 Seal of Excellence labels, and it is foreseen that under Horizon Europe we'll have around 300 a year. That's quite a reduction. And I was just wondering, what is your view in supporting those Seal of Excellence companies, and especially in the view of implementing the Seal of Excellence schemes on the national level, if it still makes sense for such numbers?
Yeah, I think we're still calibrating. So as you say, we had around 3,000 in the last year of the pilot. But if you look into that, we think about 70% were repeat seals of excellence. They were not companies. In fact, we had a big problem with, 70% of the applications were resubmissions. We had companies resubmitting 6, 7, 8. We even had one company resubmitting 15 times. So that's why we've made changes on the resubmission. Everyone gets a second chance, but then there's a cooling off period. So out of those 3,000, probably only 1,000 were actually new seals of excellence. When we changed the system in the first year of the EIC, we saw we were generating very few seals of excellence, and the problem there was that we were giving the juries the decision about whether to award the seal of excellence, and the juries didn't really understand what the seal of excellence was, and so we ended up with very few seals of excellence. So what we're doing now is to say every company that goes to the jury, because they've already passed all the criteria from the remote evaluators, if they are not selected for direct funding, they will get a seal of excellence. But there's also a safety break there. If the jury really thinks this company should not have been at the interview phase, the jury can say, okay, this company doesn't get a seal of excellence. So I think this is working better. If we look at the first cutoff for 2022, we awarded 172 seals of excellence from one cutoff. What we're aiming to do is to have 4 cutoffs a year. So we'll see, but we'll see how the numbers develop. But I know it is an important issue for national programs, because there needs to be, it doesn't make sense if you only get 1 seal of excellence every 5 years to have a whole program for this. So I think we're trying to get it right, but it's also super important for us that we can really, with as much assurance as possible, to say every seal of excellence company is a fantastic company. This company has the potential to be a world leader in its field. So even if there's only one company, if that company becomes Google, then we're all big winners here. Not all of them will, of course.
Thank you, Keith. And we have a representative of beneficiary here, Pavel. And you experienced the European funding because you received funding for phase 1 under SME instrument, and you also experienced the interview in front of the jury because you applied for the phase 2, let's say, or EIC accelerator nowadays, and you are currently starting implementing the Seal of Excellence project or funding on the national level. Could you maybe share with us your experience and how you perceive the difference between receiving the European and national funding? And dare to be critical.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Pavel Turčina, and I'm from Perfect Company, because we've got a Seals of Excellence on the very first try we applied for. Maybe I would like to give you some background around the company. We started in space-related projects. The legal name suggests so. We built the very first Slovak satellite and put together technical expertise I'm really, really proud of. And yes, we decided to go into bigger market and take advantage of upcoming trend of Internet of Things. And we are happy that we did it because we came up with quite a few solutions bringing value for customers, and we were approached by a very clever man that advised us to apply for a very competitive scheme as EIC is. So we applied. It was like 3 years ago, and we were successful, and we got funding directly from the European Commission because of SME instrument phase 1. So we got basically 50K, and we conducted a feasibility study, and it was very helpful because we applied for another phase within SME instrument phase 2. And we were invited in front of jury. And despite of the fact that we were not selected, we've got a seals of excellence, of course, and luckily our national government decided to support those holders of this credential. I guess there are 15 of such companies within Slovakia, so we are in a very nice club. And yes, we at the end of last year we started implementing the project. We were granted seals of excellence for. And I have to say that I see some differences between approaches of European Commission and our local government. Of course, the European Commission is more focused on the goal, and in our local scheme there is a lot of much more bureaucracy. You know, gold plating. It's something we face every day, and I see, and I don't like also resortism in this process, because the civil servant running this program, we are, by the way, very grateful, but there are a lot of practical obstacles, you know. Public servants are taking care of every single details. Reporting is very, very important for them, and I think they do care about process more than the goal itself. So yes, I see some differences, and I only wish that every government can have an agency like EIC, because they do understand in a way innovations and innovative companies. They really do, and I really appreciate that we have such opportunity to have a funding and to meet our competitors, even very tough competitors, and it's great to see that we are competitive enough to be successful also within such competitive scheme.
Thank you, Pavel. You mentioned some of the challenges you address by taking the opportunity of funding this or having this funded from the national sources. You mentioned bureaucracy and different view maybe on what is important, yes, for the project. What about the conditions when you compare the original European conditions of former phase 2 with what you now have on the national level?
Actually, I think that it is not fair to compare a grant in volume of 50K and a much bigger grant, of course. But I really see that European Commission is focused on bringing and gaining goals. It is absolute priority, and I really think that in a scheme we are in now, there are a lot of small steps that needs to be conducted correctly according to the, I don't know, whatever law you know. So it is very tricky, and you don't have a chance to run such project without some agency which has some experience, of course, with working with structural schemes and those programs. So we literally rely on such support, and we are trying to be focused on business side of the grants. So it is really different, but it is not fair to compare a 50K grant and much bigger. So I understand that there must be some differences.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for this kickoff of this panel. I have several questions. Sorry, Monica. I have questions almost to all of you. So if I may dare, I will say them at once and then ask you maybe to react. My first question is to Anatoly. I would like to know, how much did you have to push for synergies in the recovery funds plans, and how much it was really the initiative of the member states to do so in the recovery plans? My second question is to Baptiste. I would like to know where you pick your experts for the acceleration services, because if I understood well, it is very personalized. So do you pick them ad hoc, or do you have this expertise inside the EIT? Maybe not really in your kicks. Then I have one question to Annabelle. The question is, how are you going to deal with the equity part in the Seal of Excellence projects? If you have your maybe national public bank who is going to cover, or how will you do it? Then I have one question to Pavel, and here I would like to know if the people who follow your projects also, because you said it's very much focused on the process and very little actually on the on what we really do. I would still like to know if you have some counterpart for the really outcomes that shall be from the projects. If there is somebody also following what you are really doing, and maybe also saying to the project officer, hey, this might not be important. What is important is the result. And I have one comment to Keith. No, it just came to my mind when listening to this, and I think that maybe a lot of member states have this problem, that they focus very much on the process and very little on the outcome. But it seems like you are good in it in the Commission. So it might be an idea for a nice CSA project. And now I give the word back to Monica.
Tanya, thank you for your questions. You took some of mine from the list, but that's great, because we are both interested in the same things. And where do we start? Anatoly, you were addressed as with the first question.
In the order of the questions, yes, if you allow me. So the question was how much did we have to push in our discussions with the member states so that they enable synergies between the RRF and other instruments like structural funds, I presume. I think it depended very much on a member state. There were discussions about their recovery plans, which were very different. The peculiarity perhaps of RRF is that it is fully owned by the member state, the implementation, the design, and the Commission is there to help, to assist. But the initiative itself came from the member states. We tried to direct them sometimes in order so that member states address some of the pertinent issues in their R&I, some R&I challenges, but it depends on a member state. The Commission maintains continuous dialogue we can provide assistance for implementation of reforms, for example. There is a technical support instrument, the policy support instrument, so that member states can perform the reforms of their systems. And also member states had to inform us about other funds that they plan to use. An important obligation was to avoid double funding of
most of the time, yes. We are 200 in the company, located across Europe, so there is always a local angle. But we bring our own staff, so we have IP experts, we have HR experts, we have marketing and sales companies. We also have legal and regulatory affairs capabilities, because regulation is so important in the field of energy. I mean, it can kill a case, and so it's really important that they know that they can anticipate regulatory developments. So most of the time in-house. However, I think the strength of this company is that we also have a very strong ecosystem. We have shareholders in the company that are large utilities, academia, research centers, financiers. So recently Volkswagen joined us as a shareholder. So for all our battery companies, we can also rely on Volkswagen to give an idea of is the technology relevant? Is the market ready? Is it interesting for Volkswagen? That's an example. When our ecosystem cannot bring this, then we turn to the outside world in a way, and we can subcontract expertise. But I think that's in not so many cases. And the strength really is about the ecosystem. The ecosystem is strong because it was created over 10, 12 years. That we have 200 or 300 startups, so they talk together. We nurture the talks, we nurture collaboration among them. They have themselves grown, or they have strong off-takers. So when a company sells to Total, or when a company sells to EDF, it can also nurture talks within this group of partners. So that's the first strength. And probably one last word is that we have also, and that's very important, we have also an education activity. It's part of our mission. And so we do promote and we do deliver masters in energy, some very technical, but also in entrepreneurship. And so another strength, or last strength of the system, is our alumni community. And our alumni that have gone through our master's degrees, they have started their own companies, they are CIOs, CXOs of large companies. And it's also part of them giving back also to the ecosystem and supporting the new ones coming in.
Baptiste, maybe one more question to you. Some of the companies you support might have kind of cross-cutting topics, technologies that could be supported also by other KICs, and the same applies for the corporations that are part of the community. Some of them, they are engaged in several or maybe more than one innovation community. Is there anything like a shared pool, or do these KICs really work as a separate entities?
I think we do our best to cooperate. I think we discussed this a little bit before our panel. There is a reality that the models chosen by each KIC is very different. So we have a very commercial model. We don't do calls. We do very little grant to no grant. And so it's also for the startup to reach out to the other KIC when there is something else on the offer. So for instance, we are very active in the batteries. And we have a strong focus now on also the raw materials for batteries, because it's part of the battery value chain, and it's very important to find solutions, including innovative solutions, just to have access to these raw materials for the battery and for the energy transition. And so it appears sometimes that those projects we are invested in raw materials for batteries have an interest in bridging with EIT raw materials, that's for sure, first example. And they do, and we cooperate, and it's perfectly fine. And of course, the energy transition is also a lot about digitalization. So we have a few assets that provide digital solution for networks, for guarantees of origins in electricity and this and that. And then they may have some interest in talking with the IT digital. And we can foster that but it's not really streamlined. And then there is the overarching body of the EIT that facilitates, shared activities, common activities, and we're glad to take part in those. But we look first at the cases.
Thank you. Annabella, the question on the equity part, when it comes to support of Seal of Excellence from EIC Accelerator, I think this was the question on the blended finance option. How to address it when the company applies for blended finance and on the national level you have just the grant component?
Tana. Okay, just trying to build a little bit on the past. More than a year ago, Keith just was in Portugal online. Not in Portugal.
I was there in person 2 weeks ago.
I know. So, and one of the things that were discussed about the importance of making all this machine working is that at national level we could build and connect the dots with all the actors or the specific actors of the innovation ecosystem. And this was something that was very, very clear from that message that when Keith were discussing with us and with these other actors like the venture capitalists that were at the meeting, how important it was to connect these dots. And is based on connecting these dots that we will try. We don't have the scheme set. No, we don't have the scheme from EIC Accelerator in Horizon Europe with the two parts. But this we will rely probably on one of these or two of these agencies that are in the innovation ecosystem that work directly with equity. And the National Innovation Agency already has some relations and programs set that we will try to explore a little bit further, but right now I don't have specifics really to, because this is, honestly, this is difficult, we all of us know that. Huh? If grant is difficult, now you mixed it up everything. Yeah.
Thank you. Keith, would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, I will. I just had a couple of comments on the other questions as well. I mean, I think what Baptiste said on the kind of advisory services, this is exactly the direction we're heading for the EIC as well. We're moving away from having sort of general things and really trying to be more tailored. And then, when we see what the need is, that we can work with partners who are able to provide that, including, and a lot of the kicks. So if we have an energy company that needs to know about regulatory barriers, then we will pass them to the experts. So we're not there yet, but that's the vision of where we want to get to. On the Seal of Excellence and Equity, it's not just for public funders. We are seeing interest from investors, from VCs, about the Seal of Excellence. It's been quite interesting with the VCs because when we started on this, their first reaction was, "This is all public funding. It's not, it's not for us." But now, progressively that we're actually working with the VCs, we're co-investing with them. We see that their opinion changes and they actually become interested in what else the EIC is doing. So if I may enter a bit brainstorming mode here, I think if we are building this platform of co-investors who are interested in these early stage technology deals, and then for the Seal of Excellence, we have national, regional funders that are supporting the grant parts. We should seriously be looking about how we can package this so we can help bring for the Seal of Excellence the investors who could be interested as well and saying, okay, we're not doing the grant part, but this national authority is doing the grant part. So I think this is something that we should definitely look at. But we know that most of the Seal of Excellence schemes are at the moment, they're doing grant funding, and we know, because we've experienced it, doing the blended and the equity is quite complex. And then there was the question about bureaucracy and process. And for me, it's been a huge journey moving from a system which is an R&D grant system to an innovation program. And I think at the beginning we didn't realize how much change this requires. So to give a couple of examples, I mean, your company, I understand, I mean, it pivoted from space to Internet of Things. So if we signed a grant agreement for you to develop a space technology, and then you see, actually you want to pivot to a completely different market, what do we do? Because the grant says that you're going to do all this for space. And traditionally, we would have said, well, that's too bad. You have to follow the grant agreement, and you have to carry on doing this. So we've changed this and said, okay, we'll meet with the companies every 6 months, and if the company wants to pivot and we think it makes sense, we will change the grant agreement, and we will. But I mean, we had huge resistance to this in the Commission. It's a big fight to make this kind of change. We now have the program managers, so we've been building in-house expertise, because I think the other lesson is that you can't run this purely with administrative processes. You need to have people who understand the market, understand the technologies. So we now have a program manager in space. We'll have one on Internet of Things very soon, and they're helping us set what are the new things we want to fund. It's incredibly important because these people can actually talk. We have some in energy that can actually talk to the KICs on a thematic basis, but then they can help us with these decisions. Does it make sense for this company to pivot? Is this good use of our money? And then the last thing that we've done, which I think has really helped us, is that we have this board of innovators, the EIC board. We have very prominent venture capitalists, people who've been entrepreneurs, who've built their company. So this is incredibly valuable. I mean, they give us a really hard time saying this works, this doesn't work, you need to do it this way, and then we need to go to the Commission system and the Commission lawyers to figure out how to do this. But I think that's really important to have these people who understand the market, understand how VC works, to be directly involved. And the last thing I'd say on this is that we're not there yet. I mean, we really need to, from the EIC side, there's a long way still to go to have it working how we'd like to be working. So, I mean, it's nice to hear, but I think we can do a lot more on the EIC side as well to simplify this and to do exactly what you're saying.
Thank you, Keith. And there was one last question before I take the other ones for Pavel on the follow-up.
Somebody who is kind of expert and who can moderate the people in the process and say this is not important.
Yes, I understand. Actually, I have met our counterpart at the Ministry of Economy, project manager. Very nice person. Very supportive, to be honest. She's taking care of process as should be. So because she understands the process better than innovation, of course. So I completely understand. But I heard that there will be another technical officer down the road taking care more of outputs of the project. So I really believe that we are calibrating, learning, and I'm grateful that this happened, because I know that this ambition was in preparation many years, and luckily new government adapted this idea to support, innovate it, and companies with seal of excellence and help them with financing. So I really think that we are on good track, and I would like to think positively of innovations and a whole ecosystem in Slovakia. I think that we are on a very good track.
Thank you. And let's take the other questions.
Morning. This one for Keith. Since we are talking about new challenging things, we have heard about a lot of these seal of excellence mechanisms, so coming from the Commission to the regions or to the member states. But we heard about in EIC this new possibility of bringing some of the projects evaluated, the startup projects evaluated at national, regional level, and give them some kind of fast track into the EIC schemes. So again, it's a new thing. I'm pretty sure that's still under development. Can you give a bit more information about this? What type of thing it will be, and especially if any idea about the timings for implementation of this? Thank you very much. Kind of reverse of excellence.
Yeah, no, it is, because I think actually we're moving into a whole new world of interoperability between programs. So it's a bit, we can evaluate things, and as you say, it's a question of trust, that the national authority, regional authority can trust our evaluation through the seal of excellence, and the plug-in is a bit the opposite way. So where are we? I think we had just over 50 national programs that were submitted. What we were looking for is schemes that are, they're at the right stage to feed into the EIC accelerator. And when we did this with the KICs, the KICs also had to see which of their programs and schemes were the relevant ones. But then the next step is to say, how does that managing body assess the projects? Because we need, it's not just that you've selected it or the managing authority selected it, that we automatically fund it as well. We need to know what happened with the national grant. So there has to be a project review. And that project review has to have, not identical, but similar type of criteria that they look at, which we use for the EIC. So, is it a really novel technology? Is it scalable? So the certification, which ended up with just over 30 national schemes, was looking at these two things. Is it the program rightly positioned? And is there a project review which is sufficient? So that's the stage we're at now. The next stage is to actually open up the process so that the national programs can submit companies that they've assessed through this. So we're looking at when to do that. I hope it can still happen in the autumn. And then we plan to have a kind of pilot phase in 2023 where we can see what happens to all these companies. Because what we've seen with the KICs is that there needs to be an iterative process. There needs to be a common understanding of what these criteria are. We've been getting some companies from the KICs that are not really aligned with the criteria, so then we need to see with the KIC how to better assess so that we have the right pipeline. So my impression of this is that it takes a little while, and it's a mutual learning, it's an iterative process. So it's not like a tap, you just switch it on and then suddenly the pipeline is there. We need to work together on both sides of the pipeline, that the things flow through it from the beginning to the end. And we've seen with the KICs that that's going to take, that's an iterative process that will take a while.
Also, one question for you, Keith, and then maybe one more philosophical for the whole panel. And the more concrete one, actually just on the other side. So that was about the feeding into the EIC accelerator pipeline. The question is also what happens afterwards, because many companies will need follow-up investment. I think we're still in the brainstorming phase of synergies with InvestEU. But maybe, Keith, I don't know if there's anything you can already let us know which ideas circulate, at least within ESMEA. And then the more philosophical question for all of you, I think, is the question, can we do too much in respect of, helping these companies navigate? Because there will always be companies that are out of our pipeline. Is it fair if we take some companies by the hand, help them navigate, some really early stage? I think the EIT KICs sometimes work with companies that are not even consolidated yet. Is it fair that we offer that range of services to a number of companies and the other ones are left out? What are the pros, what are the risks, and how do we deal with that?
So on the first question, so we have, as I said, we have like 130 companies from the pilot phase. We are able to make follow-up investments, so we are starting to do that. And we've also started a discussion, and we're discussing it with member states about what is the exit strategy for the EIC fund. And there can be a number of exit strategies. So I think this is something we're going to have to see as we go along. But it's important that the whole purpose of this is not that we are there forever in these companies. We have to accept that a lot of them will fail. So a lot of these exit strategies are essentially going to be write-offs, or we kind of force the company to take back our equity at zero cost, so we're not stuck with lots of zombie companies in the EIC fund. But there'll be lots of positive exits as well. So this is a learning phase for us, but the idea is that these will be scalable, very attractive propositions for other investors to take over. But we know a lot of these technologies take a long time. These are not technologies that reach the market in a couple of years. So we're also ready to be in for the long term, because this is where we see the market failure with the VCs. So, I mean, it's a bit... and some of this stuff you only learn by doing, and we'll make a few mistakes along the way. But that's a bit where the discussions are. And maybe just to comment on your second question, this is also... we are being very selective. 200 companies from 6,000, that's a very different approach from giving lots of companies lots of small amounts. And I think at European level we have to do it, because we need these kind of champions in the new technologies, and we've seen what happens when we don't. And then it becomes a question of how you do this selection and being able to exit. If something's not working, you need to get out quickly if you're taking these kinds of risks. And this goes against the philosophy of public funding, that we pick something up in the evaluation up front, and then we just have to carry on, even if it doesn't make sense anymore. So it's also about the flexibility, about trying to get out of the ones which are not working so well.
Thank you. I'd like to also comment the first question on follow-up investments, and then maybe go into a bit into the philosophy as well. So on follow-up investments, I think it's a very good question. And we discussed synergy among programs, but I think the dream scenario in a way is to have an approach from, let's say, low TRLs to market and growth. And that companies that are picked up through Horizon Europe and in very low TRLs can see or can access when they're worth it, when they deliver additional support across their journey of R&I, but also of entrepreneurship. So I think that's a very good case. I have one example to give here. We have a number of companies in wave energy, so I'm not going too technical, but you can convert the power of a wave, and it brings a lot to the energy system. Over the last 15 years in this sector, I think there was 650 million financed by Horizon programs on research. Those companies now, they are technology leaders, they are European, they are technology leaders in the field. There are a couple of them, 3, 4 of them. They are reaching commercial and industrial scale. It's a risky business, it's new, and there is no visibility on whether follow-up investments can be supported by EU programs. No visibility. And so it's the idea that dream scenario, an end-to-end approach. But that's industrial policy, it's not innovation policy. It's much broader than this. But that's something we can probably see on how to improve. Then the philosophy. In France, we have a philosopher, Descartes. It's about rationality. And the idea behind that is that we need to be rational about the use of public finance. And there is one thing behind that, is that no case will succeed only on public finance. It's mainly about private finance. But then again, even finance is not alpha and omega for success. It's about having an off-taker, it's about having a team, it's about having many things. So you will not be able to support everyone. Not everyone will be winners. And so I think there is a responsibility also in the EU public side to create those winners, to help them happen in a way, but it's not possible to support everyone.
Thank you. Any other question? Because we are running out of time, but we can still take one more.
Sorry, Francis Dupré from Belgium. It's also a philosophical question, but maybe a dear one. We are willing to currently plug in quite a lot of money from the RRF into the innovation system. But there's a clear deadline. I mean, the money needs to be consumed and accounted for by, I think it's August 2026. And then all of a sudden, there's the big gap. I mean, the ones that were working with RRF money up till that moment, all of a sudden have to figure out how to continue. So this kind of disruptive things we implement by using public money, this is one of the concerns I have and I see for our future, because the world is analog. It just doesn't stop at August, and then and this kind of way in innovation, having programs of up and down and change in a more continuous, prosperous innovation. Do we have any view on that one?
Yes, I think you are very right that the RRF money, they have to be spent within the specific and quite restricted time span. So all the milestones and targets, they have to be achieved by August, and the final payment is done in December 2026. And this is within the logic of this instrument, because the purpose of the RRF was to provide an important, impactful boost to the EU economies to fight, to recover from the COVID crisis within a limited time span. And this applies not only to research and innovation, which of course takes time, but also to other areas. And yeah, this is this may be an issue. This is a requirement. I think it is too early maybe to think what happens after 2026, because we just started to implement all the measures. So there are more than 200 research and innovation measures in all the plans. There are even more milestones and targets. We'll have to think how to ensure continuity and sustainability of all these good investments, but probably later on. I don't expect that the projects will just stop. For example, some IPCIs. From my side, as someone who is working on the Recovery and Resilience Facility, I think the most immediate task will be to implement all the measures in the recovery plans, taking into account also other EU funding instruments to make sure that these measures are compatible, coherent. There is no double funding, but at the same time they mobilize the synergies and fund complementary elements of reforms and investments.
I think that government need to learn from what EIC is doing more, and create more room, bigger set innovation as a bigger priority, because innovation is a way how to go further, to avoid lagging and avoid middle wages trap. So definitely I think this is the way to go.
Thank you. Thanks to all panelists for a very interesting discussion. And the outcomes will be summed up by Tanya Halova-Perglova in the follow-up session.